Well, today we're doing 3 Thanksgiving Crockpot side dishes. So the first one that we're going to do is loaded mashed potatoes. Now, I normally do these on the stovetop and then bake them in the oven, but what I have found is the last couple of years, I have so many things that need to go in my oven, and I wanted to try some recipes that I could do in the crock pot to kind of free up my oven space on Thanksgiving or any holiday. So what I've got is 5 pounds of russet potatoes. Use whatever kind of potatoes you like. And I decided today that I would leave the skins on. Now, I do peel my potatoes most of the time, but I do like the skins. I know I get questions about that all the time. I do like the skins on potatoes. So today I decided for this recipe, we're going to leave the skins on. So I scrubbed my potatoes really, really well. And then I am just going to dice them up into manageable size pieces. And we're going to throw those over into the crock pot. So if you don't have as many people to feed, you can absolutely make this a smaller recipe. Just scale the recipe back to whatever fits your needs. So once you have your 5 pounds of potatoes diced up and put in your crock pot, we're going to add a little bit of butter because you can't make mashed potatoes without butter. So I have 1 stick of unsalted butter. If all you have is salted butter, that's absolutely fine. I'm just using what I had. And I'm just going to cut these up into smaller pieces and sprinkle them over the top of my potatoes. Now, I did say that we're doing 3 Thanksgiving side dishes. We're actually doing 2 side dishes and a dessert. Because, again, there's so many things that go in the oven at Thanksgiving. And if you're like me and you have a small house with 1 oven, it really takes some work to try to figure out what goes in where, and I'm always scared that something's going to get cold or something isn't going to get done or whatever the case is. So like I said, I just wanted to take some things that we always make for Thanksgiving and do a recipe in the crock pot just to make my life and my kitchen work a little bit better. So once you have your stick of butter in your crock pot, you're going to add some seasonings. Now I'm adding about a teaspoon of salt, about a half teaspoon of black pepper. Now, I also, once I finish this, I go back and taste it and add more seasonings if I need it. I like to start kind of small because we are going to add like other things to this, cheeses and things and bacon, and sometimes that can be a little salty and you don't want these to be too salty. So then I added in a teaspoon each of onion powder, that fine onion powder y'all know I don't like, and some garlic powder or granulated garlic, whatever you have. It doesn't really make any difference. I just sprinkle that all over the top of my potatoes. So then we are going to put it into our insert into the crock pot, obviously. And we're going to turn these on high for 4 hours or low for 6 hours, just until your potatoes are tender. And I also added, and I don't know how I cut this out, but I did add in 1 cup of chicken broth. You can use water if you don't have chicken broth, but I like the extra flavor from the chicken broth. So once your potatoes are all cooked, if you have a lot of liquid still in your crock pot, drain that off because you don't want soupy potatoes. But I didn't have a lot of extra liquid left, so I'm just going to go ahead and mix these. Now you can mash these by hand if you want to, but I like mine smooth, so I use my little hand mixer for this. Now we're going to add in the stuff that makes it all creamy, right? So I'm going to add in 1 cup of light sour cream. I only buy light sour cream because I don't really like sour cream unless I'm putting it in stuff. So I just think if it's light, it's healthier. It's so much healthier. But anyway, use whatever kind of sour cream you want, but you need 1 cup of it. Then we're going to add in about a half of a cup of milk. You may need to add a little bit more depending on how chunky your potatoes are, but I like to start with a half cup because, again, I don't want my mashed potatoes to end up soupy. I want them nice and creamy, and I don't want them watery or milky or, whatever the case is. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. But then once I add my sour cream and my milk, I just mix this in really, really well. And like I said, I did leave the potato skins on mine, so you see the little skins all mixed through there. If you don't like potato skins, you absolutely don't have to leave them on there. It's fine. Do whatever you want to in your kitchen with your mashed potatoes. So anyway, like I said, I used my hand mixer and I got everything mixed up nice and smooth. So because these are loaded mashed potatoes, we are going to add some bacon. I didn't have any bacon to cook, but I had a pack of bacon bits. And I like these real bacon bits because if I'm going to have to use something that isn't actual bacon I cooked myself, I don't want it to be those hard little crunchy pieces of fake bacon bits. So I added in about a cup of those, and then I'm going to add in some cheese that I shredded up, probably, I don't know, maybe a cup and a half-ish or so. I mean, do we really need to measure cheese? I don't think so. I really don't think we need to. And you can also add more bacon if you want more bacon in yours. You can add more cheese. You can add whatever flavor cheese. I think this was a sharp cheddar, and it's just what I had grated up, so that's what I used. And then I tasted it, and, well, I added more cheese, clearly, because I figured there was only a little bit left in the bag, whatever. Now, you also have an option here. I did taste it and I added some more salt and pepper. But if you wanted to, you could dump all of this into a dish, put more cheese over the top, and bake it in the oven just to melt the cheese. If you wanted to do that, but you do not have to. This can be completely just done in your crock pot, and you have a big pot of mashed potatoes, and you're good to go. These are delicious. And I also, if you have leftovers of this, you can make little potato balls and air fry them. I have a video on that. If you're interested, go find that video. Those are delicious. But now you have some easy loaded mashed potatoes. The next thing that we're going to do, because you can't have Thanksgiving without macaroni and cheese, right? We're going to do macaroni and cheese. So what you're going to need is 4 tablespoons of butter. We're going to add that to a pan, and then we are going to add, once our butter is melted, we're going to add in 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. We're making a roux, y'all. We're making a roux. And you're going to mix that up, and we're going to let that cook, 2, 3, 4 minutes, something like that. It'll get a little bit brown, and you just want to cook that raw flour taste out of there. So once that has happened, you're going to add in slowly 1 can of evaporated milk. And look, the printable recipes will be in the description box for y'all as usual. So add in your can of evaporated milk. You're going to stir that around until it starts to thicken up. And then once it thickens up, we are going to add to that slowly 4 cups of milk. This is a lot of dairy, I know. If you need to do some water in here, if you don't have 4 cups of milk, you can do that. But I love the creaminess that all these dairy things give this macaroni and cheese, especially since we're cooking it in the crock pot. Then once your 4 cups of milk are added in, you're going to add in 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. This is not low fat. This is very decadent macaroni and cheese. So once we've added everything in and everything is starting to warm back up, we're going to add some seasonings in here. We're going to add in a teaspoon of onion powder. We are going to add in a teaspoon of garlic powder. I like to mix in between when I add each seasoning and try to sprinkle them like you see me doing, because what I have found, especially if you've got something warm and it's kind of thick like this milk mixture is, the seasonings a lot of times will try to clump up. Now, eventually they'll cook down. We're going to cook it for a long time, but I just try to sprinkle it and stir it in between each one just to keep that from happening. So then we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, and I was just about out. I was down to the bottom of my smoked paprika. Y'all got to get some more. But we're going to add that in there. This gives it a really good flavor. You can also add in some dry mustard. I do that a lot of times when I make macaroni and cheese, but I did not have any, weirdly, and so I did not add any to this recipe, and it's fine without it. But if you're somebody who likes to add it, you absolutely can. So I'm just slowly adding in my smoked paprika, and until I get it all, mixed in there. Then we're going to add, of course, some salt and pepper. I'm adding about a half teaspoon of salt and about a quarter of a teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm going on the low side of the salt because we're going to add so much cheese in here. We are going to add a ton of cheese in here, y'all. And I didn't want it to be overly salty. So once you get everything added in, when you get your cheese and everything mixed in, taste it. And if you feel like you need some more seasoning, you certainly can. So I went ahead and sprayed my crock pot with some cooking spray because, again, we're using a lot of dairy, a lot of cheese, and we don't want it to stick, any worse than it's just going to stick anyway. So you can see this is pretty thin, and of course that is because we had so much liquid that we added. So you're just going to gently pour that into your crock pot and make sure you scrape all that goodness out the bottom, in case you have anything that kind of stuck down there. You want to get it all out of there. And then we're going to add in our pasta. Now you can use elbow noodles or whatever kind of pasta you want. I am using this cavatappi. That's probably not the way you say it, but that's the way I say it at my house. And I'm going to use 1.5 boxes. These boxes are 16 ounces each. So I'm going to use 1.5 of the boxes, or 1.5 pounds of the pasta. However you need to, figure out how to measure yours. You're just going to add that in there, and then you're just going to kind of make sure that your noodles are as much underneath that milk mixture as you can get it, because we want to make sure that these noodles cook, and you don't want the top ones to still be crunchy. We're going to cook these on low in our crock pot for about 2.5 to 3 hours. And you want to stir this halfway through, again, to make sure those top noodles are getting cooked as well as the others. So while everything is over there cooking, I'm going to go ahead and shred up my cheese, or my cheeses. So what I am using is 2 cups of either mozzarella or Monterey Jack. I have Monterey Jack. And whatever I shred up that I don't need, I just put into a Ziploc bag and stick it in the refrigerator or the freezer. So then I'm shredding up 2 cups of Colby Jack cheese. And then I'm going to shred up 2 cups of sharp cheddar cheese. And those are the 3 cheeses that I'm going to use in this recipe. So this is what our macaroni looks like after the cook time is done. Make sure your noodles are nice and tender. Stir it up good. And then we're going to start adding in all of that glorious cheese. So I just add a little in at a time and get it good and mixed up, because your pasta is super hot, so it's going to melt your cheese pretty quickly, but I don't want it clumping up, so I just add a little at a time. So I'm just stirring that in, and then I will go in and add some more of our cheese. And then we're just going to keep on stirring it until every bit of that glorious goodness is mixed in there. But again, if you like different types of cheese, you can use a more expensive cheese if you want to, or you can add some Parmesan in here if you want to. And this is another one like the potatoes. If you want to mix this up and then dump it into a bacon dish and sprinkle some more cheese on top and then brown it in the oven for just a minute or two, you certainly can, but you certainly do not need to, okay? So anyway, this is pretty much all there is to it. I added all my cheese in. You can see how stringy that cheese is starting to get. Y'all, this is some ooey gooey goodness in this macaroni and cheese. So I just stir it up really good, and that is it. You have a big crock pot full of macaroni and cheese, and it didn't take up any space in your oven. So the last thing that we're going to do is a crock pot pecan pie cobbler. So what you're going to need for this is 1.5 sticks of butter, or 12 tablespoons of butter. I know it's a lot of butter, but this is a big pot of stuff, okay? You're going to melt your butter and then pour that into the bottom of your crock pot. Then we're going to take some chopped pecans, and we're going to add about 1.5 cups of our chopped pecans right down into our butter. We're not going to stir anything in our crock pot. That's kind of why this is a cobbler. We've put butter on the bottom, and then we're just going to pour things in and not stir them once they get to the crock pot. So in a bowl, you're going to add 1 box of yellow cake mix, and then you're going to add in what am I doing? I'm adding in brown sugar. How much? 1 cup. I lost my mind temporarily. 1 cup of packed brown sugar. That is the brown sugar that I make myself. If you want to know how to make brown sugar, I do have a video on that. It's very easy, and you can see how soft it is. Mine, I've never had issues with it clumping up, and that brown sugar, I haven't baked in a while, so that brown sugar has probably been sitting in there for several months anyway, and it's still super soft. So then to a small bowl, we're gonna pretend like we don't know how to crack an egg, and we're gonna crack 3 of those right into that bowl. And then we are going to add something that for some reason is very, very controversial. People do not like corn syrup. I mean, I get it, I guess. But I've never made this without it. So, I don't know what substitute you could use for corn syrup, because that's what I use in this recipe. But maybe you could Google if you don't want to use corn syrup and figure out another ingredient that you can use in its place. But I'm going to use a cup of it. Okay, I'm going to use a cup of this light corn syrup, and I had just enough left in this bottle to be able to do this. Now, I don't use corn syrup a whole lot, but I use it a good bit around holiday time, just because there's lots of candy and cookie and dessert making going on. So once you get your corn syrup all measured out, you're going to pour that right into your bowl. And the reason I'm doing this in a separate bowl from the cake mix and the brown sugar is just because it's easier to get this all mixed up, and you don't end up fighting the syrup against the eggs and all that kind of stuff. So it's just easier to do it this way, in my opinion. And then I added in roughly a teaspoon of vanilla. Again, recipe is going to be in the description box for y'all as usual for all 3 of these recipes. I'm going to whisk that up really good and get everything good and combined. And then I'm going to pour that right over into my cake mix, brown sugar mixture. And yes, this is a lot of corn syrup and sugar and butter, but it's a dessert, and it's Thanksgiving, and we eat it once a year. So we're going to be okay. You don't have to eat the entire crock pot at once. You can eat 1 spoonful if you want to. So I'm going to mix this up really well until all of my wet ingredients are good and combined into my dry ingredients. So then we are going to pour this into our crock pot. Now, we are not going to stir the pecans into this. We are going to just pour this right over the top. Just kind of try to get it as even as you can. Just cover up your pecans, because we want the pecans to be a nice ooey gooey bottom for this cobbler that we're making. So just pour it all into your crock pot until you get everything out of your bowl. And it is pretty thick and a little bit sticky just because of the corn syrup, but it'll be fine. Just keep on going, pour it in there. So then we're going to put the lid on this. We're going to cook this on high for about 2 hours, but watch it, okay? This will get real done real fast. I almost let mine go too long, but you can see it has started to pull away from the edges, and the center is nice and set. So that's what you want it to be. But like I said, I did about 2 hours, but crock pots, I have 4 crock pots. They all cook a little bit differently, so just keep an eye on it, okay? You just want it to be set in the middle. It doesn't have to be brown around the edges, but it does need to be kind of set in the middle, and that's how you'll know it's done. But I wanted to scoop this out and show y'all what the inside looks like. You can see our pecans on the bottom, but you can see it is not dry at all. It's nice and moist, even though I hate that word, and delicious. This is really, really good, y'all. And you didn't have to bake the pecan pie in the oven, so you didn't take up oven space. So this is what a little bowl of our pecan pie cobbler looks like. This is great if you add a little bit of maybe whipped cream or some caramel or some ice cream to it. It would be even extra delicious. And then these are our loaded potatoes. I normally add green onion to mine, but I didn't have any, so bacon and cheese would have to do for today, and they're delicious no matter which way you do it. And then don't forget, last but certainly not least, our ooey gooey macaroni and cheese. So I hope that y'all enjoyed this video, and I hope that you're going to make some of these this year. All right, that is all that I have for y'all today, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.